بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله نحمده ونستعينه ونستغفره ونؤمن به ونتوكل عليه ونعوذ بالله من شرور أنفسنا ومن سيئات أعمالنا من يهده الله فلا مضل له ومن يضلله فلا هادي له ونشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له ونشهد أن سيدنا ونبينا ومولانا محمدا عبده ورسوله صلوات الله عليه وعلى آله وأصحابه وأزواجه وذرياته ومن تبعهم بإحسان إلى يوم الدين. أما بعد، فقد قال الله تبارك وتعالى في القرآن المجيد والفرقان الحميد بعد أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم يا أيها الذين آمنوا إنما الخمر والميسر والأنصاب والأزلام رجس من عمل الشيطان فاجتنبوه لعلكم تفلحون. وقال النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم لا يشربن ناس من أمتي الخمر يسمونها بغير اسمها أو كما قال عليه الصلاة والسلام. Honorable ulama kiram, respected elders, beloved youngsters, mothers and sisters listening at home. There is no doubt that this life that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given to each and every human is a life of challenges, a life of struggles, and a life whereby an individual has to make many sacrifices. Also a life wherein one has to make many choices. Choices of whether one should adopt the path of good or a choice of where one should adopt the path of evil. So there is no doubt this life is a life of challenges and struggles. This is why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in the Quran, He says, وَلَقَدْ خَلَقْنَا الْإِنسَانَ فِي كَبَدٍ, that we have created this human and placed him in a situation of challenges and struggles. In terms of the choices that we make, we can either raise our ranks in the eyes of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and surpass the rank of the angels, or with making the wrong choices we can fall as low as becoming worse than the animals. This is why it is mentioned that in Allah Ta'ala خَلَقَ الْمَلَائِكَ وَرَكَّبَ فِيهِمُ الْعَقْلَ, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala created the angels and He endowed the angels with intellect, with sane choice. وَخَلَقَ الْبَهَائِمْ وَرَكَّبَ فِيهِمُ الشَّهْوَةِ, and He created the animals, but He entrenched within the animals the trait of following lust and desires. On the other hand, وَخَلَقَ الْإِنسَانِ, He created this humankind. وَرَكَّبَ فِيهِمُ الْعَقْلَ وَالشَّهْوَةِ, and both of these features of intellect and also following one's lust and desires, both of these traits have been entrenched within the humankind. فَمَنْ غَلَبَ عَقْلُهُ عَلَى شَهْوَتِهِ فَهُوَ أَعْلَى مِنَ الْمَلَائِكَةِ, he whose intellect surpasses and surfaces and supersedes his lust and desires, he is able to suppress his desires and he doesn't succumb to the whims of his ego. Rather, his angelic qualities surface. Then such a human will become more noble in the eyes of Allah than the angels. وَمَنْ غَلَبَتْ شَهْوَتُهُ عَلَىٰ أَقْلِهِ فَهُوَ أَدْنَى مِنَ الْبَهَائِمِ, and he who follows the whims of his ego, follows the lust of his soul, then he shall fall from the grace of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to such an extent that he will be worse than the animals. In fact, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in the Quran, أُولَٰئِكَ كَالْأَنْعَامِ بَلْ هُمْ أَضَلُّ, that such people will become like the animals. In fact, they will be worse than the animals. So this choice has been given to each and every human. It is up to us which path we adopt and which path we take. However, there is no doubt that in this life, there will be many occasions when we will be stood at a crossroads. And it is up to us which way we turn. And many a times when we are out in our social gatherings, socializing with our friends, those very friends of ours whom we call friends, will be inviting us, will be luring us towards the path of evil, nay, towards a certain path and towards a certain habit, which is probably not only just harmful to us and as an individual, but when we succumb to this particular vice, we become a headache for society. And this particular vice is probably more harmful not just on that individual, but his entire household and the entire society as a whole. And the very vice that I am referring to is which Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions in the Quran, and He says that indeed, intoxicating oneself and gambling and devoting oneself to idols and indulging in pulling arrows out of a quiver, which is a form of raffle that the pagan Arabs used to engage in those days, in their times. He said, all of these acts, رِجْسٌ مِّنْ عَمَلِ الشَّيْطَانِ, are the filthy acts and the filthy tricks of shaitan. فَجْتَنِبُوا, stay away, refrain, drop it if it means experiencing, even if it means experiencing a cold turkey, as we say. Even if it means experiencing blowbacks, even if it means, anxiety and pain, withdrawal symptoms. Allah says, فَاجْتَنِبُوا, stay away, لَعَلَّكُمْ تُفْلِحُونَ, so that you may become prosperous. إِنَّمَا يُرِيدُ الشَّيْطَانُ أَن يُوقِعَ بَيْنَكُمُ الْعَدَاوَةَ وَيَصُدَّكُمْ عَنْ ذِكْرِ اللَّهِ وَعَنِ الصَّلَاةِ فَهَلْ أَنْتُمْ مُنْتَهُونَ. Why does shaitan want you to engage in these dirty habits and these dirty acts? So that he may stir up hatred and enmity amongst you. وَيَصُدَّكُمْ عَنْ ذِكْرِ اللَّهِ. And it is inevitable that once you engage in these dirty acts, you will be deprived of the remembrance of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. You will be deprived of coming inside of the masjid and bowing and prostrating before Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. فَهَلْ أَنْتُمْ مُنْتَهُونَ. Are there any of you that will refrain? Is there anyone from amongst you that will stay away? In Sunan al-Nasa'i, Babu Tahrim al-Khamr, when these verses were revealed, Hazrat Umar radiallahu anhu said, "Oh Allah, intahayna. We will stay away, we will refrain, we will not engage, we will not indulge." But unfortunately, this has become very prevalent within our communities and our societies, where many individuals, and it's not a nice subject to talk about, especially sat over here, but it's the truth. Many youngsters have succumbed, and even many elders have succumbed to this vice. And as a result of it, we see the pain and sorrow and grief that has to be experienced by those surrounding those individuals. This is why in the tafsir of these verses, in Bayanul Quran, it is mentioned, فِيهِ أَنَّ الْمَعَاصِي تَتَضَمَّنُ الْمَضَرُّ الدُّنْيَوِيَّةَ كَتَضَمُّنِهَا الْمَضَرُّ الْأُخْرَوِيَّةِ. That there is no doubt that when one engages in such filth, in such filthy acts, then he will not only be harming himself from a worldly aspect, but also from a aspect of the hereafter. Harms of the worldly aspect we hear time and time again. How many times does it happen that we receive phone calls as imams? Ask your own imam. I'm sure in the many years that, mashallah, he's been here and he's a veteran. He's been here for so many years. 20 years, what's up? 27 years. 27 years. Should be giving him a jubilee. Huh? That doesn't mean say you get a day off namaz, by the way. So, you can ask him, in his 27 years of serving this community, so Maulana, how many times has it happened that you've received phone calls, these painful phone calls? On the other side of the line, there is a father, there is a mother, there is a wife, that is maybe even a brother or a sister, and they are basically explaining that, Maulana, we have a person in our midst, in our family, who unfortunately has succumbed to this dirty and filthy habit of either consuming alcohol, or he is basically, he has become an abuser of many different substances, which again, due to which he is intoxicating himself. This is why Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam says in this hadith that la yashrabanna nasun min ummati al-khamr, that there will come a time when many people from amongst my ummah will consume alcohol. They will intoxicate themselves with alcohol. And not only alcohol, they'll be using other substances, yusammunaha bighayri ismiha. They will play with the linguistics and the semantics of intoxicating, and they will use other substances as well. Whether you're popping a pill, whether you are using weed, whether you are sniffing gas of whatever sort it may be, whether you are snorting powder, yusammunaha bighayri ismiha. You're just playing with the linguistics. The effect is the same. You are intoxicating yourselves. You don't even know who you are. You don't know where you are. For that temporary pleasure, or to feel light in the head, as they say, or just to forget all the pressures of life that you are experiencing. You are temporarily trying to gain this comfort and solace in these substances that you are using. But what you don't understand on the other side, the harms of this world is that as a result of you becoming an addict or engaging in what you are engaging in, you are literally destroying the family around you. You are destroying the community that you are living in. You are destroying the society that you reside in. How many times do we receive these phone calls? Well, as a result of this individual, the whole household is upside down. Abnormality becomes the norm of the house. And we have people crying on the other side of the phone. They are having to pay to feed your evil and your dirty habit. They are then having to contend with your debts. They are the very same people that are now trying to protect the younger children and the younger siblings in that household. That we don't want them to become like this person. You are harming yourself, you are harming those around you. And then we receive these phone calls, Maulana, what shall I do? Take him to the doctor, he needs medication. Take him for counseling. To enter him into a rehab. But it gets to a point where nothing works. Maulana, he stays clean for a short while, but then he goes back to his old tricks. What shall we do? We're up to here now. And I think people engaged in these things, they also need to understand that, there is a threshold of tolerance. How much is your family supposed to tolerate? And we as a society, this is something we need to understand as well. That many a times you see that maybe a household abandons such an individual. And then you see him, wandering around the streets. He's living, a life where you're thinking, look at the way he's become. Look how low he's become. Pity on his family that they abandoned him. Do you seriously know what that family went through before they even made that decision? Do you know how many years of pain and suffering they endured before they reached a stage where they said, you know what, now we have to close the door on this guy? And even then they've not bolted the door on him, they've closed the door. And they say to him that the moment you become sober, the moment you become clean, and you've basically rid yourself of this filthy habit, the doors are open for you. They're willing to accept this person with open arms. Many a times the family becomes torn. You see, one parent will adopt the path of empathy. And they're thinking, this is my son, this is a person of my family, I can't do this to him. But then the other parent is torn, thinking that this is affecting the rest of the people in the household. And now they're going down a path of, adopting an iron fist, saying that no, we can't have such a person in the home. The whole family is torn apart due to this one individual. And do you seriously think they wanted to make that decision? And as a community, we then look down on those people and we shun them? That look what they've done to him, they should have kept him, they should have looked after him, they should have supported him. Do you seriously think they didn't support him? And not only that, we as a community, when we have these people in our midst, do we not shun them? Do we not look down on them? When they come inside of the masjid, we look at them and we think to ourselves, what's he doing over here? That Allah that brought you here, do you not think He can bring him inside of the masjid? I had a guy, literally last Thursday, he rings me up and he said, Maulana, I need to see you just for 5 minutes. And I've known him for a few years. For a few years. How did I get to know him? You seriously want to know? He rings me up. I didn't know him before that. I received a phone call. Maulana, I want to book a driving lesson. No problem. Where do you live? Give me your address. What time is suitable for you? I arrange an appointment with him. I go to pick him up on the appointed date and time. He comes and sits in my car. He looks at me and he says, do I know you from somewhere? I look at him and I say, I definitely know you from somewhere. Looked at him for a little while longer and I said to him, were you in Kirkham? And when I say Kirkham, I don't mean living in Kirkham, I mean in Kirkham prison. Alhamdulillah, every year I go there, and I've been going for as many years, mashallah, I've probably been invited by the likes of Maulana Imjaz, mashallah. I go there every year in Ramadan to deliver, obviously, a khutbah and lead Jummah Salah there. And I also worked there for a few months as well, many years ago, in 2003 I'm talking about. So I asked him, I says, were you in Kirkham? He says, yeah, I was. I was in prison. So I said, okay, well, that's where you've seen me, and that's where you know me from. I said, I come every year. He says, yeah, you're the sheikh that used to come to lead the Jummah. I said, yeah. Anyway, I started teaching him. And obviously when you're giving somebody driving lessons, you get to learn a little bit about their background, drugs, gangs, guns, you name it. Everything. Everything. MashaAllah, served his time. He was trying to become a better person. And his state of mind and his emotional state was such that, many a times when the driving lesson would finish, he'd be crying. This is a grown man who was a single parent as well, by the way. He'd be crying. And no, Ibrahim, not because I shouted at him, yeah? Okay. Probably a student like you would need that, but, but not because I shouted at him. But that was his mental state because of the things he was involved in. And, he needed help. He needed counseling. And whatever support I could give him as an individual, I tried my best. So he rings me up on Thursday morning. He says, Maulana, I need to see you for 5 minutes. And since then, this guy, I can assure you, he's trying really hard to become a better person. Prays his namaz, does everything. Tries his best. But again, look at us as a society. What facilities do we have? What services do we have? That when such people are coming out of prison, such people are coming out of these kind of environments and these kind of backgrounds and from a past of such a nature, what do we have whereby we can integrate them back into society? Nothing. Absolutely nothing. And I will say to you, and it hurts me to say that, you know what? We failed. We definitely have failed, whether we like it or not. We may be sitting here, mashallah, in our couple of £1 million masjid and mashallah in the warmth of the masjid, and don't get me wrong, this is important as well. And I know, mashallah, how hard you people have worked to even establish this as well. But it doesn't stop there. It doesn't stop there. These people are being lost. We're losing these people. We have nothing for them. And not only do we not have anything for them, what's he saying to me? Listen to what he's saying to me. He says to me, Maulana, he says, in the last 9 months, he said, I've had about 9 or 10 different jobs. Every time I go, I try my best to earn a halal living, and I end up failing, and I end up moving on to another job. But when I am going for jobs, when I am going for these jobs, people are only willing to pay me £6-7 an hour. £6-7 an hour, which is like almost half of minimum wage. And we expect such a board because of his past. We're trying to exploit him. We're trying to take advantage of such an individual. And we think we can get someone on the cheap. Yet this guy is then now going home and he's saying to himself, Maulana, I can't even get to the end of the month. I don't have enough money to feed myself, to feed my child. He says, because of my situation, I have to give my child back. This is what he's saying to me. He said, Maulana, I can go back to my old ways. I can earn £2,000-3,000 a day, aram se. £2,000-3,000 a day doing the wrong things. But I'm trying to earn a halal living and this is the way I'm being dealt with, this is the way I'm being treated. What shall I do, Maulana? This is us as a society. This is how low we've become. So we judge people very quickly when families abandon such individuals. Yet what have we done for these people as a society? And not only have we not done anything, we're exploiting such people. So there is a threshold of tolerance. There is only so much people can actually endure and tolerate. But there comes a point where they have to close the doors. Marriages are breaking up. Children are becoming like, living in split families. Living with single parents now. My dad's not there. Why? Because he was a drug abuser. So I'm only living with my mother now. What happens to those children? It's a downward spiral, I can assure you. And being in the field of childcare, I can tell you the kind of children we have to deal with. When then children's services become involved and it becomes so messy. And then you see the emotional state of those children. Again, you feel for them. These are the harms of the world. In terms of the harms of the hereafter, do you seriously think that once you die it will finish? No, it won't. It only starts. It doesn't finish there. Malik bin Dinar rahmatullahi alayhi says that on one certain occasion I went and I traveled for the reason of Hajj. And whilst I was in Mecca, he says I was stood near the Kaaba. And I was just admiring the sight and watching the thousands of people and the mass exodus of people converging around the Kaaba. And I was kind of just watching this beautiful scene in front of my very eyes, when suddenly a thought occurred within me, and I was questioning myself that manil maqbulu minhum wa manil mardud, that hundreds of thousands of people have come here to perform their Hajj, but who is it from amongst them whose Hajj has actually been accepted, and who is it whose Hajj has been rejected? So I was tussling and I was juggling with this thought in my mind. And it caused me somewhat pain and anxiety, not knowing which group did I belong to. Is my Hajj been accepted by Allah, or has my Hajj been rejected? So anyway, he says, I spent the rest of the day consumed in this very thought. And then later that evening, I retired to my bed and I went to sleep. And in this sleep, I was told that, Ya Malik, غَفَرَ اللَّهُ لِلْجَمِيعِ إِلَّا رَجُلًا وَاحِدًا, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has forgiven each and every individual. And Allah has accepted the Hajj of each and every individual, but for one person. But for one person. His Hajj has not been accepted and his Hajj has been rejected. So he says, I woke up the following morning and I'm thinking to myself, Alhamdulillah, majority of the people, their Hajj has been accepted, but for one individual. But now my mind is playing games with me and saying to me, what if you are that one person? What if you are that one person whose Hajj has not been accepted? So again, this caused me much anxiety. And I spent this entire day again juggling with this thought in my mind. Only for me to retire to my bed later that day as well. And this time I was told in a dream that, O Malik, you are not from amongst them. Ibrahim, I hope you're not dreaming as well. Huh? Okay? Yeah, keep your head up, beta. He's an old friend of mine, so I can say what I want to him. Okay? So don't start dreaming here. You won't be having dreams, mate. You'll be having nightmares. Shoaib, I'm watching you as well. I am watching you. Okay? Especially if you support United, it'll be nothing but devils. Yeah? Right. Anyway, so, as I was saying, yeah, take your jacket off so you don't feel warm, huh? It's that underfloor heating in it, what's up? See, too much money spent on that underfloor heating. Yeah? Anyway, so, I pick on these guys because I have a very long-standing relationship with them, okay? So, I'm sure they won't mind. You better not mind anyway. By the way, you've not given me dawat this year. Why? You're lucky I've got a dawat after this. Yeah? but you'll have to make qaza of this. And you know it's qaza and kafara, isn't it? Huh? You missed it on purpose. So it's not just qaza, kafara as well. Chalo. Okay. Anyway, so he's being told in this dream that, you know, you're not amongst the person that has been made an exception where your Hajj hasn't been accepted. But rather it is a person by the name of Muhammad ibn Harun, and he is from Balkh, the city of Balkh, a place in Afghanistan. So he says, when I woke up the next day, he says, I felt even more, I felt relieved that my Hajj has been accepted. But on the other side, I felt grieved by the fact that, you know what, everybody's Hajj has been accepted, but this one individual, why? What exactly has he done for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to reject his Hajj? So he says, I started making inquiries and I wanted to meet this person to find out what the reason was. And then eventually I found a group of people that knew him. I spoke with them. And you know what? The more surprising thing was the fact that when I spoke with them and I asked them about this individual, they gave me rave reviews about him. They said he's a very pious man. He's a very noble individual. He spends his day in worship, he spends his night in worship. So he says, this confused me even more. And I'm thinking, how can this be? Every person that I've spoken to has spoken good about this person. And they've given me good reviews about him. Yet I'm being told in a dream that he is the only individual whose Hajj hasn't been accepted. What is the reason for this? So he says, eventually I managed to locate him and I found him. And I went into the room where he was staying, only to find him engaged in worship. I sat behind him and I waited. He realized that there is a person that has come to see me. And after finishing what he was doing, he turned around and he says, I saw the glow on his face, his modest and humble demeanor. And I didn't have the courage to even say to him why I had come there. Only for him to say to me, oh Malik, how can I help you? Why have you come here? He says, with a choke in my throat and with a tremble in my voice, he says, I said to him, I didn't want to answer him, but he said, no, please tell me, why have you come? See, so I said to him, he says, listen, I had this dream. And in this dream, I was told that everybody's Hajj has been accepted by yours, but for yours. So he says, I can't understand why. When I look at you, you seem like such a pious person. You seem like a saint. You seem like a sage of our age. So what did he turn around and say? He says, oh Malik, you're not the first person to give me this message. And you're not the first person to say this to me. He says, I have been coming for Hajj for the past 30 years. And each year, a person comes to me and he says to me that, you know what, I saw this dream. Everybody's Hajj has been accepted except for yours. So he said, but why? So he explained. He says, when I was a young person and I was living my life to the full, he says, I had a very evil habit of consuming alcohol, intoxicating myself. This one particular evening, I went out with my friends, شربت خمرا عند خدن لي, and we went out for the very wrong reason of intoxicating ourselves. You know, like the youngsters say nowadays, to leather ourselves, to have a blast. Yeah? So he says, this is what I did. I went out. And I came back on a total high. I was totally intoxicated. And when I entered into my home upon my return, he says, أَتَمَايَلُ فِي مَشِّي. He says, I was stumbling from one side to the other. I could barely walk straight. And in this very state, I entered into my home and my mother was there waiting for me. And she saw me in this state. She was the one that then helped me come into the home. But at the same time, she said to me, he says, Malik, he says, Muhammad, آخر يوم من شعبان أول يوم من رمضان يصبح الناس صواما وتصبح سكران. He says, it is the last day of Shaban. It is the eve of Ramadan. Tomorrow morning, even the sinners will wake up in a state of fasting. Even the disobedient will become obedient. In the less diligent will become more diligent. and everybody will wake up in a state of fasting, and look at your state, you will be waking up in the morning in the state of being intoxicated, in the state of being drunk. What is this? He says, when my mother scolded me in this manner, in a fit of rage, in my stupidity, in my naivety, he says, I slapped my mother. I slapped her. And as a result of me slapping her, she fell into a fire that was kindled nearby. He says, since that day, though I've now become a better person, he says, I've been coming for Hajj for the past 30 years. But each year a person says to me that your Hajj has been rejected. Harms of the hereafter. So many a times a person wants to atone for the wrong that he did. And you will be able to, don't get me wrong. Allah is most clement, Allah is most merciful. And Allah will wipe your slate clean. But the effects of this will remain with you till the day you die. That evil that you succumb to and that wrong that you do you seriously think that past will always leave you? It will always catch up to you at some point, whether you like it or not. Hence we have to want to change. These divine opportunities that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gives us, whereby we can turn towards Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and blessed months such as these are for this very reason, so that we make these intentions to change. And like Maulana Suleiman said very beautifully, mashallah, when he came to your masjid, what did he say? Does anybody remember? That shaitan has no problem with your noble intentions so long as they are for tomorrow. So long as they are for tomorrow. Make as many noble intentions as you please for tomorrow and not for today. Shaitan is okay with that. He won't even waste his time on you. Carry on, no problem. We have to want to change today. And don't get me wrong, it's not easy leaving sin. But like Maulana said, it's definitely possible. And there are hundreds of examples out there. And if you are really genuine wanting to change, then the very first step that you will have to take, after you've taken all the other necessary steps of counseling and rehab, etc., you need to understand that even a rehab is not a place where they perform magic. This is only a place that can help you to achieve the aims that you've made of becoming clean. But once you come out of there, what will you have to do? The first step that you will have to take is you are going to have to change your network of friends. And that network that you used to socialize in, you will have to change it, whether you like it or not. Going back to the same group of friends, and that same network of friends that you had, you are only leading yourself into a hole. You're just going back into a hole. And you will relapse, whether you like it or not. Those were the very friends that took you there in the first place. How can you return to the same people? So if you really want to change, you will have to change your network of friends. After the demise of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, there was a certain impostor by the name of Musaylama bin Kadhab. Musaylama Kadhab he was called. And he laid a claim to the throne of prophecy after the demise of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Claimed to be a prophet. So this was one of the first pressing issues that Hazrat Abu Bakr radiallahu ta'ala anhu had to contend and deal with. Immediately upon the demise of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he dispatches an army. One certain individual who was actually the son-in-law of Musaylama, he defected from his army. And he came to Hazrat Umar radiallahu ta'ala anhu. And he turned around and he said, Ta'ibun qabla an yuqdara alayya. He says, you know what, I made a mistake. I was with the wrong group of people. I want to repent, I want to change. What did Hazrat Umar radiallahu ta'ala anhu say to him? Again, changing your network. What did he say? He says, idhab fa'anzil ala khayri ahli al-Madina. He says, if you really want to change and you are genuine in your claim of wanting to change, then you know what? Change your company. Change your network of friends. Go and stay with the most noble men of Medina. He says, I took this on board and I kind of heeded to the advice of Umar radiallahu ta'ala an, فَنَزَلْتُ عَلَى تَمِيمْ دَارِي. He says, I went and stayed with Tamim Dari radiallahu ta'ala an, a noble Sahabi. And then he explains that on one occasion, فَبَيْنَمَا أَنَا عِنْدَ تَمِيمْ وَنَحْنُ نَتَحَدَّثْ إِذْ خَرَجَتْ نَارٍ. Now look how noble these people were. He says, on one occasion I was with Tamim radiallahu ta'ala an, and we were having a discussion when suddenly there was a volcanic eruption. There was a volcanic eruption. Hazrat Umar radiallahu ta'ala anhu arrives. He's informed that, listen, this has happened. The people will be affected by it. He comes to Hazrat Tamim radiallahu ta'ala anhu, and what does he say to him? He says, Tamim, go and deal with it. Go and deal with that volcano. So he turns around and he says to Hazrat Umar, he says, Ya Amir al-Mu'mineen, it's nar, lava, fire. What am I supposed to do? He says, I don't care. Go and deal with it. Do what you need to do. So Hazrat, this person says that I saw Hazrat Tamim radiallahu ta'ala anhu stand up. He went towards the lava. فَقَامَ يَحُوشُهَا بِيَدِهِ. He started motioning towards the lava. Started pushing it back. He pushed it back. He pushed it back. To the point that it receded into the earth once again. This is what they were like. اذهب فأنزل على خير أهل المدينة. Go and stay with the right people. Hazrat Umar radiallahu anhu comes and he sees what Tamim has done. He says, لِمِثْلِ هَذَا نُحِبُّكَ يَا أَبَا رُقَيَّةَ. He says, this is why we love you, O Abu Ruqayyah. Because of the way you've just dealt with this whole situation. You are enough for us in any kind of an emergency. So this is what they were like. If you really want to change, you will have to go and stay with the correct people. In Surah Tawbah, when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala finishes that surah, the last ruku of that particular verse, what does Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala start that ruku with? With the very verse, Ya ayyuhalladhina amanu, ittaqullah wa kunu ma'as sadiqeen. Fear Allah and stay and remain with those who are truthful. In the whole surah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala talks about the expedition of Tabuk. And the 5 different groups of people that the Sahabas were divided into when it came to answering the call of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam in taking part in this expedition. There were those الَّذِينَ اتَّبَعُوهُ فِي سَاعَةِ الْعُسْرَةِ that responded to the call of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam straight away, and they joined him. There was a second group of people who were slightly reluctant, they were slightly hesitant, but eventually they also obliged. The third group of people were those people that wanted to join, but they didn't have the financial muscle. وَلَا عَلَى الَّذِينَ إِذَا مَا أَتَوْكَ لِتَحْمِلَهُمْ قُلْتَ لَا أَجِدُ مَا أَحْمِلُكُمْ عَلَيْهِ تَوَلَّوْا وَأَعْيُنُهُمْ تَفِيضُ مِنَ الدَّمْعِ حَزَنًا أَلَّا يَجِدُوا مَا يُنْفِقُونَ. They didn't have the financial muscle, so they couldn't join. The fourth group of people were those that didn't join. وَقَعَدَ الَّذِينَ كَذَبُوا اللَّهَ وَرَسُولَهُ. They were the munafiqeen. They lied to Allah and they lied to our beloved Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam. They made excuses and they didn't join. And then the fifth group of people were those genuine Sahaba who didn't join. But at the same time they didn't lie. Upon the return of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, they came and confessed to their mistake and the error that they made. Okay, 7 of them Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala forgave straight away. 3 of them, their forgiveness was slightly delayed. Amongst them was Hazrat Ka'b radiallahu ta'ala an. And this was no ordinary ordeal that they had to deal with. In fact, it was such testing times for these 3 individuals that at a later date when Hazrat Ka'b radiallahu ta'ala anhu was questioned, he said there were moments when I would wish that the earth would split and I would be swallowed by the earth. That's how difficult is what it was. But then when he was asked that what exactly was it that saved you? How did you manage to get yourself through this particular ordeal? What did he turn around and say? He says, we didn't behave like the munafiqeen. We didn't lie. وَإِنَّمَا أَنْجَانِ اللَّهُ تَعَالَى بِالصِّدْقِ. Because we spoke the truth, we were eventually forgiven by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So if you really want to change, even Allah then mentions that listen, after this entire kind of ordeal of Tabuk and these individuals and these 5 groups of people, if you want to be a better person and you don't want to be like the munafiqeen, ittaqullah wa kunu ma'as sadiqeen. Stay with those that are truthful. So long as you change your network of friends, you are on the correct path of changing and reforming. But if you want to go back to the very same people, then you know what? You are lying in your claim of wanting to change. And let it not be that you delay to such an extent that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, there is divine intervention and Allah decides to close the doors on you. Allah decides to close the doors on you. Many a times divine intervention happens. Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam was sitting with a sahabi who was eating, and he was eating with his left hand. Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam saw this and he said to him that Sammillah wa kul biyaminik, that say Bismillah and eat with your right hand. Why are you eating with your left hand? He turned around and he says, O Prophet of Allah, mastata'tu, I can't do it. I can't eat with my right. Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam saw that, you know what, he's only making excuses. And he's only refusing to do so out of the pride he has in his heart. Divine intervention intervenes, and what happens? Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam said to him, lastata'ta, you'll never be able to do so. فَمَا رَفَعَهُ إِلَى فِيهِ, he was never able to lift his hand to his mouth till the day he died. Divine intervention. So let it not be that we delay to such an extent. وَقَالُوا قُلُوبُنَا فِي أَكِنَّةٍ مِمَّا تَدْعُونَا إِلَيْهِ وَفِي آذَانِنَا وَقْرٌ وَمِن بَيْنِنَا وَبَيْنِكَ حِجَابٌ فَاعْمَلْ إِنَّنَا عَامِلُونَ. The disbelievers of Makkah, what did they say to Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam? When he invited them, he tried to explain to them, believe in that one Allah, believe in me as the messenger. He says, you know, there's a blockage in our ears. There's some kind of heaviness. We can't hear you, O Rasulullah. We're not understanding you, O Rasulullah. There seems to be some kind of a veil between you and I, between us and you. You know, and as a result of this, we're not understanding you. You know what? You carry on doing what you're doing. فَأَعْمَلْ إِنَّنَا عَامِلُونَ. We'll carry on doing what we are doing. We'll carry on doing what we are doing. Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam tried to explain to them time after time after time. Eventually, إِنَّا جَعَلْنَا عَلَىٰ قُلُوبِهِمْ أَكِنَّةً. Now the hearts have been sealed. The truth will not penetrate anymore. Goodness will never ever enter into that heart anymore. Divine intervention. You can try your best, but you will not understand the good that is coming to you. Turn around now. Repent now. Make that intention of wanting to change now. Don't wait for tomorrow. Tomorrow never comes. And this is why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given us these divine moments. Let's turn to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And a fruitful thought for our communities. That you know what are we providing to these people? What facilities do we have to actually assist these people in their rehab? Let's not shun these individuals. Let's embrace them. Let's make it easy for them to change. And so long as we are genuine, and inshallah, Allah will open the doors. Allah will open the ways for us, inshallah. And we will be able to unite our community once again, no matter what background they may come from. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala grant us all the tawfiq to make the most of these last few divine moments and days that we have. And may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala grant us all the tawfiq to draw closer to Him and build that genuine bond and connection with our Creator. Wa akhiru da'wana anil hamdulillahi rabbil alameen.
Jazakallah Maulana Riyaz Dola, like usual. Jazakallah, inshallah.